Hello folks, it's Hobby Nightmares time. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful day of it. And that things are going well as we head down towards the end of the week. We're already there. It's great, isn't it? If you're working this weekend to keep the world going round, then thank you very much for putting a shift in so the rest of us can have some time off. Right, let's jump into the old Hobby Nightmares, shall we? Sunday, if you are interested in a big old live stream, we will be doing a live stream on Sunday, and it will be covering, or we will be doing, the next session of this bad boy right here. It is the Cyberpunk 2087 role-playing campaign. I nearly died last time, so come along to this one to see what's next in Theo's journey, and Doc's and Slink's and Darby's. Everybody should be there for this one. And it's going to be night 2, so our second big gig, our second big night of the Cyberpunk campaign. A lot of people really liked the side gig we did last time as well, so get involved on Sunday. Should be awesome when we're going to be having some fun. Hopefully we'll all not die. Right, jumping in to Hobby Nightmares, let's have some fun, shall we? It is Lithobius. How's it going? And she says, "Hey North, it's Lithobius again. Hope things are good with you and yours, and it's not too hot over there. It's not too bad today, actually. It's 21. It's quite nice. Thanks again for reading out some of my past submissions. Last time I sent in a picture of my hand in a brace as I binged Hobby Time over the holidays and gave myself a repetitive strain injury. So an update on that, I suppose. My physiotherapist said I should not stop painting and hobbying, which is great. I should instead be trying to find ways to do it that doesn't irritate the injury, because it's what I'll need to do in the long term. Currently, I've made a lot of progress. I can have the brace off for most daily activities like typing and cooking, but I have to sleep with it on and use it for things that would irritate it, like painting. Progress has been non-linear, and I've had several setbacks where it's gotten worse, then better, then worse again. I was hoping it would be 100% healed in 6 months, but yeah, not so much. It's currently in a worse period, I suppose. Hobby-wise, I've been doing a lot of Gundam painting because the pieces are so much bigger. It's a lot less strain overall. Yeah, move away from Warhammer, man. Move away from Warhammer, do other things. I agree. Anyway, or invest in some Tau. Or Necrons. Anyway, this one is role-playing related, as I agreed to run an intro game over spring break, quote-unquote, in March. Grad students don't really get a spring break, but I did get to go home. I meant to send this in back then, but I stopped writing it pathway through because it didn't feel like a nightmare. More like I was working up a minor inconvenience into being something that it wasn't. But then, I listened to a few nightmares where multiple people in a row talked about change of plans, and how they can be anxiety-inducing and really stressful. And yes, having problems with sudden plan changes is an autistic trait. Of course, everybody feels irritated with a change of plans, somewhat, but it's really the degree and the fact that it can lead to meltdowns, shutdowns, irrational anger, etc. that defines the autistic experience of it and turns it from a minor irritation to a serious problem. Dude, that's me. Like, I've always known, right? I've always known that I'm a bit autistic. You know, it's only since my daughter's been seeing like a therapist who specializes in it, where she's like, yeah, she gets all this from you. I was like, what? Yeah, this is all you. And I was like, but I'm not autistic. And she looked at me and went, sure, you're not autistic. It's like, geez, thanks. But yeah, I do have problems with changed plans right at the last minute. I'm just like, oh, for God's sake, do you know what I mean? I just hate it. And again, as Lithobius says there, I don't just hate it in a way that I'm like, oh, that's irritating. I get really angry. I don't let it out. I'm so angry inside when things change. It's like, no, we decided on this. We're doing, especially if it changes through like want rather than need. Oh, well, we may as well just do this instead. I'm like, no, we had a plan. This is what we're doing, right? Anyway, tea time, or is it Pepsi Max? It's usually Pepsi Max with a little bit of vodka in it on a Friday, but it's too early, so it's coffee. Neither. So there you go. Or it's likely Friday when you read this, so maybe something more colourful. Dude, she knows me so... Dude, you know me too well. You need to, like, lay off my videos for a bit. But I found something neat At an import store last week, so you can see what I'm drinking whilst I write this, I attached a photo of number 1 tea. Added some local flavour, but it's proper otherwise. Okay, let's have a look-see. Oh. Well. Well. I tell you what. I don't think my missus would be happy with me receiving delightful pictures from other women, but like I think she'll give me a look at that. She'll give me a pass on this one. Lovely old job. Well done. Maybe don't put the maple syrup in there. Are you putting maple syrup in your Yorkshire tea? No. I do like it's got the Canadian flag on it. That's pretty cute. That's funny. Anyway, so lately I've been getting back into running Dungeons and Dragons games. Last year I ran a one-shot with my grad student gaming group, and I ran another one-shot with my parents when I went home to visit my mum's birthday. For my mum's birthday, sorry. They bought me a Dungeons and Dragons starter kit as a kid, and it has become such an important part of my and my brother's life that we wanted to share it with them again. Maybe a short story for another time. So logically, my partner Adam asked me to run an intro game for his painting group when I came back in early March. That's cool. Now, a bit of background on this group. Adam teaches maths at a university. Mostly at a lower level, so it ends up being a lot of freshmen or older returning students and ex-military people. Recently, some of those students have aggregated into a regular gaming group that has been hanging out in the maths department for a couple of semesters now. Yes, I am changing your word math to maths, but there we go, I'm British. Since Adam hasn't been their professor for quite a while, it isn't a conflict of interest anymore. It's a good excuse to crack open all the board games that have been just collecting dust with me so much. And sometimes he has several hours between teaching every day and night courses where he has to stay on campus, so I guess you could say he's sort of the faculty advisor for an informal gaming club. So this group wanted to try out Dungeons and Dragons. And from here out, I'll refer to any of them as the class they picked to play in our intro game. There were a few that had played role-playing games before, but none with a lot of experience in running games. Though Bard expressed interest in taking over DMing after the intro game. I've been running games off and on since I got that 3rd edition starter box set in Christmas 2001. So sure, I'll run the intro and hand it off to Bard to develop a longer campaign for anybody who actually wants to continue. Adam said they were given permission to use the large conference room in the department on the weekends, so we'd have a huge table all to ourselves. This is cool. Of course, in the month before, I'd been busy, and realised the one-shots I'd prepped for other games weren't going to be particularly useful here. So the Sunday before I head back, I open up my folder of one-shot PDFs and message Adam. They had just gotten together in the maths department room to make characters. Okay, I said. We decided to make second level, so that's good. Which classes? There's what, 5, 6 players? I said. Adam, no, 8 players. Okay, well, danger already. You can't do that. Like, I very rarely say you just can't. But 8 players is too much for a seasoned, good dungeon master, right? With seasoned, good players, 8 is too much. You may be a seasoned, good dungeon master, but with 8 newbies at a table, nah, man. You could be the best DM in the world. This is going off the rails already. Okay, that's a few, I said. This would require a much simpler session than the ones I had in my PDF collection if we were going to actually get through it. Plus, who knew how many would actually come on the day? If I prep for 8, I'll get 5, and if I get 8... Oh yeah, did I mention over half the group has ADHD and that all of us are medicated, so a large portion of the task might just be keeping people focused since the session had a very solid end time due to players having jobs afterwards. Paralysed, I stopped thinking about it and switched to a different project altogether. 2 days later, I had a light bulb shower moment. I could use the intro dungeon crawls from my 3rd edition starter set. I just have to update them to 5th edition and make a scaling chart to allow for how many people might show up. Since those missions are simple, they'd be easy to keep people on track and easy to scale. Literally, go to the crypt to fight skeletons. Okay, sure. I'll make the map bigger and add more stronger skeletons, and kill all the skeletons and get the loot is relatively hard to get sidetracked on if I don't fill the dungeon with other interesting things. When I got back, I dug out my old box, or really, more like pages and booklets in between 2 flat pieces of cardboard, as they had long since lost their ability to be a box. See photo 2, starter kit for some nostalgia. Okay. Let's do that. Some nostalgia. I do like some nostalgia. Where was I in this? Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Gotta love it. Do any of you watching have a little box like this where you have all of your really old stuff? I'm talking like things from D&D. Because if you do, they're probably worth a lot of money now. I'm not sure how much D&D books go for these days. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Like, how much do they go for these days? Is it a lot? Ooh. I would think it would be quite a lot, but there you go. Moving on. The actual translating and scaling of the encounters took a few hours, and I made a version of each encounter for 4 to 5, 6 and 8 players. I updated the maps to fit more monsters and PCs in every room, and found minis for all possible monsters. We also prepped some dungeons and lasers modular terrain to complete the dungeon crawl experience, though we didn't get colour on all the player characters' minis, and okay fine, the skeletons are half done or less. But it didn't really matter, it's fun anyway. Picks 3 and 4 are the first room set up with the skeletons and miscellaneous PC minis. Are those skeletons a bit familiar? Let's have a little look-see, shall we? Love me skelly boys. They're really hard to get right. Skeletons are really hard for companies to get right. Hey! Well, yeah, do you know what? I would say Games Workshop do good skeletons. Let's be honest. Of all the things they do, like my missus has a few behind me on the shelf. They're good stuff, man. Even these days. You know? Anyway. Throughout the week, some people cancel, then others who couldn't come before join in. Every time I think I'll get a more usual normal-sized game, it goes back up to 8 players. And players joining at the last minute don't have characters or have loads of questions about their characters. Okay, we'll just make sure we're there early and people who need help are always there early, and Brad is there early too, since he can also help us. That morning, I write up the adventure hook. We load everything up, minis, books, dice, notebooks, snacks, and head to the university. It's about a 45-minute drive, and we're left with plenty of time to get in and set up. Mood is good overall. I'm feeling surprisingly prepared for the inevitable insanity. Tea break as we drive there, I suppose. No traffic, it's all good. I like your writing style, Mythobius. I like the writing style. You know what? I'm going to take that sip of coffee. Thank you. So I'm very sorry. Sometimes when I sip my coffee or my tea, I slurp at the end and it sounds like a fart. If that comes across in the microphone, I'm very sorry. Especially if it's hot. We temporarily park by the entrance nearest the maths department to run things up, and it's locked. Adam taps his ID over and over, but it's locked. But there are other cars there, and they all got in last Sunday to make characters. He runs to the doors nearby. Locked, locked, and locked. We drive to another entrance. All the buildings are connected by passageways, so we just have to find one open door. On the way over, we call the ranger, a key member in organising everything. That entrance is locked. She says the dormitories on that part of the campus have free common rooms, but an event is going on in the nearby arena. It's really unclear whether there's any available parking at all, and police are actively patrolling and ticketing people. We drive to another nearby building. Cleric suggestion. We're using our phones as actual phones, actually calling everyone and telling them to hold on and don't come to campus just yet. Plans might be changing. We run into Paladin and Monk. Their IDs don't work either. None of the doors open for either a student or staff ID. There are plenty of cars in the parking lots though, so clearly somebody is inside the buildings. We could technically wait for someone to come out, though who knows how long that'll be. Campus security probably won't let us in to play games, and city police are just sitting in some of the parking lots too. But it's already well after 2 o'clock, the original start time. At this point I can feel the clock ticking, viscerally. Every part of my body feels like it's thumping and tingling with the uncertainty and pressure, heavy with a chest burster pushing against my ribcage. After quite a bit of back and forth trying to figure out the probability of anyone actually having access to the buildings, we start heading to a friendly local game store 30 minutes away, the closest one with any play space. We knew they had a few long tables since we'd played Magic there before with some of the group members. Dude, I'm not like this. I would have called it. I'd have said, look guys, nobody's fault. The university did a massive screw up. I'm calling it. I'm not doing this. Would any of you guys gone ahead with this plan? I would have called it and gone home. I said, listen guys, really sorry. Nobody's fault. We can't do this today. Something going on at the university. We'll do it next time. Do you know what I mean? What you're doing right now, this is my idea of hell because you're in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people and you're on a clock. So you're already behind the clock. So you're already cutting things out. Nah, dude. Not for me. I'd if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it right, or I'm not doing it at all. You know what I mean? On the drive up, I checked their website, and Magic Standard was listed on their Sunday events. Standard format, decks made with recent sets only, hasn't been as popular as it used to be lately, so I couldn't imagine there'd be a big enough standard players on Sunday to take up all of the tables. I was still trying to stay calm and calculate what could be cut from the content I prepared and how to onboard everybody as fast as possible. Plus, generating half a dozen contingency plans for if I walked in and the tables were covered in Magic players. The drive felt so long. So long. Eventually we got to the store. I run in to check the table situation, and yes, Standard is only taking up one of the long tables. A few random people at another are sitting there chatting, and an Age of Sigmar game on one of the epic terrain-filled wargaming tables. We're good. I set up on the table that's a little smaller than I'd like, but not right next to the Magic players, and buy a few things in the store to pay our table rent. And then, we wait for everybody to finally arrive. We also made sure the people who were there had their characters ready if they still had to do that, and I collected their reasons for being in the Dragon's Flagon that fateful evening so I could combine it all into the hook. Doing this useful work made the offness I felt over the all over subside a little bit, but it didn't go away for the rest of the day. One change of plans I can get over and be okay, but this many, with this much time up in the air, spent in waiting mode, it would completely ruin my day if I gave into it. Lithobius, you're way braver than me. I would have called this at the university. Honestly. I couldn't let it though, because I had a job to do. I had a lot of practice just rolling up my sleeves when my whole body screams at me to retreat to a dark, quiet place and stim. The Magic players were a bit loud, but I can project. I read off my campy intro book, giving them a reason to take any work they can get and plop them into the town with a necromancer problem. And then, everything went really well. Like really well. There were none of the typical D&D nightmares with amateur actors or politics or power gamers. Despite my nervousness about wrangling half a dozen ADHDers, the delay had made most of them more focused as we had a goal and a tight deadline. The biggest problem was the encounter scaling. With this many characters, there's a really fine line at lower levels between too easy and insta-death. But for all the drawbacks of 5th edition, I really like the death save mechanic, because it means when the squishy monk gets clobbered by an ogre's club, they still get a chance to survive the encounter and learned a valuable lesson about just cockily stomping ahead of the group. So, I was able to select harder options on my little spreadsheet to give them a bit of a challenge. I'm not sure there's a good way to balance any RPG for 8 players, to be honest, but this session came really close. Maybe if I had to run a session for this many players again, and with less of a time crunch, I'd focus more on non-combat encounters that don't require scaling and still have consequences. I.e., don't stick your hand in the hole snakes kept crawling out of, Paladin. That's not the solution. But I had to cut a bit of these as solving the puzzle can't be sped up the way you can direct people in combat as a DM. Anyway, we got through almost everything I'd planned. People got to work on time, and they enthusiastically said they had a good time and wanted to try it again. That's in Bard's hands now, though. I don't go home often enough, and 8 players is exhausting. So, that's all for that one. Just getting it typed out and edited is bringing back a bit of that changing plans anxiety. Thanks for reading Lithobius. Well, thanks for sending it in, and I get what you mean. Changing plans is awful, and well done you on your tea choice, as long as you're not putting in, maple syrup in there. And yeah, we'll carry on to our next Hobby Nightmare. Alrighty, our next dude wants to be anonymous, so we'll stick with anonymous. We'll call you Ben. Why not? We'll call you Ben. That's not your actual name, is it? No, it's not. Good. I've done that once before, where I picked a random name and it's been their name. It's your fault being called John, that's all I'm saying. Anyway. Good day, North, he says. Let's keep me anonymous. Okay, let's do it. I hope this finds you well. I've been binging your content for the past couple of weeks, and honestly can't get enough. Good man, thank you. Keep it up. Fair warning though, there are strong opinions ahead. Also, sorry in advance, this one's a bit of a long ride. This Hobby Nightmare starts with Magic the Gathering and ends in the grimdark future of Warhammer 40k. For context, I was still in the US Army at the time, and living what I'd like to call the golden age of my hobbying life. I didn't start out as your local typical nerd. Sure, I played video games, but I grew up around people who looked down on stuff like Magic the Gathering or Warhammer. I never had anything against it, I just never looked into it. Then one day, a good friend convinced me to give Magic a shot. I was really hesitant at first, but he promised we'd get messed up and party afterward. Of course, we ended up playing all night, and the next morning, I'd already dropped hundreds of dollars on cardboard crack. Just like that, I was hooked. My dive into full-on nerddom had begun. At first, I was pretty self-conscious about it. I struggled with being open about my interest, but I got over that pretty quick. Eventually, a new guy joined our unit, and the two of us made it our mission to convert anybody who would listen to us. We built a solid group. I think we had 9 people playing Magic the Gathering regularly, every weekend or every other weekend. Fast forward, do you know what the amount of stories I've had of guys on deployment playing Magic the Gathering? Because, like, being a soldier is like 99% nothing. Like, every soldier I've ever spoken to, like, yeah, what's a tour like? They're like, all right, boring. Boring. Like, I'm standing in a tent in my underpants. It's so fucking hot. And I just sit there and I just look at the sand. Do you know what I mean? It's hurry up and wait the job. Until it's not. When it's not, it's like the most exhilarating, terrifying job on planet Earth. But the other 99% of the time, it's the most boring thing you could ever do ever. That's like what I get from most soldiers. You know, even like even if they're like special forces, they still say the same thing. But their percentage goes up a bit. It's like 90% boring and 10% pants-shittingly terrifying, right? And exhilarating. You know, anyway. So, we built a solid group. I think we had 9 people playing Magic the Gathering regularly, every weekend, or every other weekend. Fast forward a bit, saving some of those side nightmares for another time, and I was assigned as a sponsor for an incoming soldier. For the uninitiated, a sponsor basically acts as the welcome committee, picking the person up from the airport, getting them settled in a hotel, helping with appointments, etc. This was peak Magic the Gathering obsession for me. So, of course, I asked him if he'd ever played, and to my surprise, he had. I was hyped. I texted the group chat immediately. Boys, we got a new player. Now, this guy was a bit off. Arrogant, abrasive, but I didn't let that stop me. People come from all walks of life, and I tried to give everybody their fair shake. That said, there were definitely a few red flags that I really did ignore. For starters, he told me he'd been joining my team and implied he would gun for my position because he was just that good, quote unquote. For context, I was on a pretty elite team that required a ton of work, training and screening to get on. His comment rubbed me the wrong way, but I let it slide. Anyway, dude, like this is not an army attitude. Like any US serviceman that I've ever spoken to, and I've had the honor of speaking to quite a few, they all tell me like attitudes like this, you're drummed out fucking quick. Like your brothers, you're in that together, and the minute you get one of these Call of Duty assholes turn up, who somehow got through the training process without being drummed out, like he got lucky. The minute you get a guy like that coming into your unit, he may be the best soldier in the world on paper until you're in a firefight. Until you're in the shit. Right? And then there's a very good reason why the French Foreign Legion, they reject amazing soldiers. Right? Because it doesn't matter how good you are at stripping your weapon down, doesn't matter how good you are at following orders when the shit isn't hitting the fan. Right? If I sense you're going to buckle at the worst possible moment, I'm not going to war with you. And every soldier I know almost has a sixth sense for that. You all need a soldier friend, because soldier friends, they have this sixth sense about dudes, right? Even on city street, even walking around, they can go, I don't like him. Like, straight away, I don't like him. Nah, he's not for me, right? And they've just met him. They just have this, you know, vibe check, but they're like, nah, not for me. Those are the guys you want to stay away from, because if the shit ever does hit the fan, and you get into a fight, or you're getting mugged or something, you know, these dudes will be running away, and the soldier will be standing next to you going, told you. Told you to do that, right? Anyway, North. This guy ended up being a full-blown needle dick. He was such a problem that he single-handedly imploded the entire playgroup, told you. He only brought control decks, only. He played specifically to annoy people. We told him straight up that his playstyle sucked the fun out of the game night, but he didn't care, and we couldn't just boot him either. You see, the army has fraternization rules. Certain ranks aren't allowed to hang out off-duty. Our group wasn't exactly in full compliance with this, and Needledick was the type to try to cry to command if things didn't go his way. We knew he'd blow the whistle if we iced him out, so we all just let the group die out slowly to protect each other's careers. Dude. Let me take a sip of tea in remembrance for your group, man. It only takes one. Only takes one. What a rat. A couple of months later, my best friend discovered Warhammer 40k and just wouldn't shut up about it. I finally looked into it and figured, you know what, why the hell not? We quickly learned that Needle Dong had no interest in 40k, so bingo! He moved on to some other poor group to torment, and we rebuilt. Before long, we had 6 to 8 guys gaming regularly. I was loving it. I drove in hard, collecting 4 armies. Granted, I did a lot of eBay resources to ease the financial blow, but still, oof. About it, dude, there's nobody hits this hobby harder than the Chad, the gym bro, who has just discovered it and has been ashamed of Warhammer his whole life, has never done it before, and finally he gets to do it. My mate Lawrence in university, dude, this guy was on a basketball team. He was getting laid all the time. He was tall. He was all that fun stuff, right? And I introduced him to 40k. Game over. Like his room was full of armies. Every spare penny he earned went on Warhammer. He had about 4 or 5 armies, man. And the thing is, he'd play a game with you, he'd like your army, and he'd go and buy one off the internet. Go on eBay, be like, right, I'll get one. You know? Because he just loved it. He absolutely adored it. And, like, he's still into it now, as far as I'm aware. But nobody hits this hobby harder than a gym bro or Chad, you know, who comes to it later on in life. It's like, finally, my people. Welcome them, dude. welcome them and ask for, you know, advice. That's what you do. About a year later, our buddy told me about a local 2,000 point tournament and encouraged me to join. It sounded really fun, so I went for it. Lists had to be submitted 2 days before the event. You got to see your opponent's list the day before, but couldn't change yours. How do they police that? Oh yeah, because you've already given them in, right? I was running Death Guard against Sisters of Battle. A pretty tough matchup. Sisters were top tier at the time, and my Death Guard list was all non-meta jank. Definitely an uphill battle for me. The game day rolls around. I showed up 30 minutes early, checked in with the tournament organiser, chatted with the other players, admired some beautiful armies, but my opponent, however, was nowhere to be found. The tournament organiser called him, and it turns out he left late and would be about 10 minutes behind. I said no problem at all. I bet this guy doesn't turn up. Then I waited. 45 minutes later, the guy finally comes stumbling in with 2 cardboard boxes and a backpack. I greeted him, shook his hand, and tried to get the game going, but this chucklefuck proceeds to take another 15 minutes, unpacking at the slowest possible speed, whilst giving me a play-by-play of his favourite sisters' models, with zero urgency. Eventually, he gets his army on the table. Everything is grey plastic or bare primer, and his list was pure meta. Normally, I don't care if someone's army isn't painted. I get it takes time, but this dude clearly just googled a meta list, bought the models, glued them together, and showed up, if he was that lucky. Then the game began, and North, this guy didn't even know his rules. He kept flipping through his codex, clearly reading it for the first time. I had to correct him constantly, even call the judge a few times, and of course, he tried to cheat, sneaking in extra movement attacks, weapons he didn't have, all while playing dumb. Eventually, I stopped calling the judge because I was just beating him that badly. I tabled him at the bottom of turn 2. He was extremely pissed, started blaming his dice, accusing me of cheating, the whole 9 yards. I showed him my codex, he quieted down. After that, he tried to save face with some friendly chatter. I stayed chill, no need to be a jerk back. We started talking about the military and he found out we were both in. That's cool. He was infantry, I told him I was intelligence. The moment I said that, his eyes lit up. He pointed at me and shouted, "Pog! You're a pog! Everyone, this guy's a pog!" For those not familiar, pog, personnel other than grunt, basically a slur in the military for anybody not combat arms. This is usually coupled with the implication of being unfit. I was stunned. This guy, in all of his overweight, out-of-shape glory, was trying to call me a pog. The irony was overwhelming. I take great pride in my physical fitness, always have, and at the time was doing extra well in that regard. I just looked at him, giggled, shook my head, and walked out with a simple, "Okay, guy." And now, I don't go to tournaments anymore. I've been reconsidering recently, but honestly, I'm still not sure if it's worth dealing with all the sweaty assholes just to get my fix. P.S. The tournament was spread over a few days, only 1 game that day. Lucky me. Alright, okay. Yeah. It's always the guys who really shouldn't that push it the most. Right? You know, it's always the guys who really, really shouldn't. Who, you know, they live in glass houses and they throw stones. You know what I'm saying? Aye. My God, man. Sorry you have to go through that. But don't just write off all tournaments. You had a really bad experience at one. Most of the tournaments I've gone to or I've seen are full of really cool people. You will unfortunately get 1 or 2 through your career as a tournament player. You'll get 1 or 2. Sometimes you get yours very early, and you got yours, right? By the way, this POG thing sounds like complete bullshit. It's bitterness. It's bitterness. Dude, he's a regular grunt, right? Because I'm sorry, lads, right? He either is extremely dedicated to what he's doing and just wants to be a grunt and has always wanted to be a soldier, which I doff my cap to you, or he's thick as pig shit. and very jealous of people who have a brain, and the military goes, "Oh, you have a brain. Maybe you should be in intelligence, or maybe you should be in engineering, or maybe you should be in a non-combat role because you have a brain," right? There's a lot of that floats around militaries from the guys I've spoken to, right? There's a lot of that flies around. So it's kind of jealousy, dude. That's all a POG thing is. It's just jealousy. They don't really want to be on the front line. Let's be honest. They want to be you, right? So you beating him in a tournament and then saying, "Oh yeah, I'm in intelligence." That's like a red flag to a bull. He's just like, "You son of a bitch. He's beaten me and he's got a better job and doesn't have to dodge bullets all day. I can't really dodge him because I'm a fat piece of shit." You know? So that's probably why he's had that reaction. Doesn't excuse him, but there's still a reason for it. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? It's Mike. How's it going, Mike? He says, "Hello, North. Long time listener, first time writer. You can call me Mike, but this story really isn't about me at all. It's a bit of a long one, but I hope you find it interesting." It isn't that long. That's what she said. "Let me tell you the story of how a Warhound Titan almost caused a prison riot. Go ahead and take a sip of tea." I have to. This is going to be crazy. A prison riot. Alright, you got my attention. This was about a decade ago while I was working in a correctional facility in the US. I was a teacher, helping inmates study for their GED and learn English, as well as working shifts in the library. The prison also offered a variety of other programs, construction, IT, etc. I tried to explain a little about how prisons in the US work and the various restrictions put on inmates. Sorry, I need to explain a little about how prisons work in the US and the various restrictions prisons place upon their inmates. Obviously, there's what everybody knows from TV and movies: meal times, time in the yard, general regimented lifestyle, make work jobs, etc. What's less known is restrictions on what inmates can read, watch, and otherwise do. At most facilities, there's a committee that will decide what books, movies, etc. are appropriate and what are not. This is ostensibly to keep out dangerous material nobody wants inmates to have. Dummy's Guide to Escaping Prison, things like that. But as is often the case, they can get a little moralistic from time to time, which causes a lot of resentment among inmates, as a book they would like to read is deemed too violent, quote-unquote, or otherwise banned for some vague reason. Working in the library, this is something I dealt with frequently, and something the higher-ups fretted about constantly. As a quick side note, I often hear lots of "inmates shouldn't get anything, prison isn't meant to be fun," to which I will say two things. A, prison isn't a fun place to be. Trust me, and no amount of movies, games, etc. are going to change that. Being in prison is the punishment. And B, keeping inmates vaguely busy and content is as much about management and keeping staff safe as it is about them. Bored and frustrated inmates are difficult and sometimes dangerous inmates. Yeah, I get that. Plus, to be honest with you, if a guy's in prison, you want him to spend his time constructively. I want you to get that GED. I want you to train. I want you to realise what you've done wrong and throw yourself into it, right? It's separating those guys who realise they've done wrong and want to learn and want to train and want to do something when they get out from the fucking dickheads, right? And the fucking dickheads can go suck a dick in the showers, right? I literally, honest to God, like the amount of, you just see it all the time, dude. Like you see prison officers all the time. I don't know, man. I don't know. It must be so difficult to separate one from the other, because there must be some guys in there who actually do want to do better. They want to become something, master, and they're like, yeah, this is going to define my life. I'm going to be in here for 6 years, and I'm going to work and train, and I'm going to come out of here with more degrees and more training behind me than I did going in. I'm going to turn this negative into a positive, and then I'm going to do well when I get out, right? You want to separate those guys away. I think that's your job, isn't it? That's got to be your job as an officer in prison. That's got to be your job. It's separating those guys away from the dickheads. But like, I don't know. I've not been in this situation. Yeah, I've not been a prison guard, so I don't know. Their prisons in the UK are a shit show. I will say that. They are absolutely awful. and everybody's just lumped in together. Like, you hear some horrific things from prison guards. You know, it doesn't work. Prison in the UK generally doesn't work. It just... There's hardly anything to do. There's no I don't think there's any training, things like that. You get to do a few little courses here and there, but, you know, you lose those very quickly if you get into any sort of prison trouble, because you can't keep the dickheads away from those normal guys. You know what I'm saying? Those normal guys want to train and do things, but they've got a load of dickheads around them who want to fuck it up for them. Can you imagine being in prison for 25 years and you're an absolute dickhead? And there's some other guy who's in there for 5 years and he's training to get his GED or a diploma or something because he's gonna get a job when he gets out. You'd resent that guy so much you'd want to fuck with him and screw up for him. That has to be the standard thing that goes on in prisons. It has to be. So frustrating, dude. It does sound like, from what you've been saying, it's a bit better than the US, but we'll see. Okay, back to the story. I worked in a level 2 facility. Basically, one step up from minimum, which means the inmates had more freedoms and perks than most. They were typically either fairly minor crimes, or they had been in for a long time and worked their way down due to good behaviour. One of the perks they enjoyed was being able to get printouts from the internet from the library. This was usually stuff like song lyrics, pictures, etc. Mostly harmless, but the occasional source of heartburn for the staff. One of my jobs in the library was to go through all of these requests, find out what they wanted, and print it out for them, at a cost of 10 cents per page. Imagine my surprise when I was going through these one day and came across a request for a quick reference guide for Warhammer 40,000. I fulfilled it, and in the following day was inundated with more requests for 40k stuff, everything from pictures to templates and everything in between. I learned over the next few weeks from overhearing conversations in the library that a bunch of guys had started playing 40k in their cells, using paper tokens and various things I had printed out for them. One guy had even started writing battle reports and circulating them around for other inmates. Oh, why do I find this adorable? Oh, dude, nurture that. If these are all minor crimes, there are no, like, murderers here. like, nurture that. Absolutely. Get in there. A few months go by, and I occasionally overhear people talking about the games, etc., and I don't think much of it. One day I come into work and are told there is going to be a shakedown, and I'll need to help. No classes or students that day. A shakedown is basically just a search of a unit looking for any contraband, etc. They move all the inmates out and bring in a bunch of staff to go through everybody's rooms. It's not terribly fun. My job this day was to write up receipts for anything taken out of rooms. This is typically stuff like too many pairs of pants, extra toothbrushes, some naughty pictures, etc. The usual. Yeah, extra pairs of pants can be used to, like, do away with yourself in your cell. It's a hazard. Extra toothbrushes can be filed down into shivs. I know that one, right? Naughty pictures look after themselves. You know what those are. Why do I know this? I don't know. I'm posted up in a common area, endlessly writing receipts. Hours go by and I start to hear some commotion coming from one of the wings. More and more officers are going down. This usually means something exciting was found. Was it homemade booze? A shank? I wait with bated breath. A few minutes later, an officer walks into the common room building. I shit you not, North, an almost 3-foot tall warhound titan, made entirely of paper, was in his hands. It was amazing. It had articulating guns and head, it twisted at the waist and had movable legs. I was awed. Everybody else was befuddled. Over the next hour, a veritable mountain of 40k stuff came out of that wing. Tokens made out of all sorts of materials, measuring sticks made from paper, a handful of space marines and orcs carved from soap, at least 2 other paper vehicles, a truck, a rhino if I remember correctly, a little collection of ruins made from cardboard, and a bunch of dice made from toilet paper that had been melted down and squeezed into cubes, allowed to dry and then marked. I was amazed. This was much bigger than I had imagined. The officers, though, were concerned. The problem was the dice, which are strictly prohibited due to gambling, but the rest was just as suspicious in their minds. Would the battle report maps for plotting an escape attempt? Did the tokens and figures have some nefarious and possible occult significance? It was a whirlwind of activity, and all the suspected contraband was packed up and taken to the main office, presumably so they could figure out what the hell to do with it. When they brought the inmates back in, there was immediate trouble. I was back in the education building but heard over the radio calls from more officers, then the lieutenant, then finally the captain to come and settle things down. It would seem our resident 40k bros were not happy and were making their feelings known. Over the next few days, I got called to answer a bunch of questions about the stuff I'd printed out. None of it was against policy, but the bosses still didn't like it. I explained that it was a game, what a war game was, etc. In the end, they only got in trouble for the dice, and everything got taken away, and 40k was banned in the facility because it was too disruptive. They would be able to read books, but that's it. Absolutely no playing the game. About a dozen guys had to wear yellow for a month due to gambling, quote unquote. The yellow uniforms are what you had to wear when you were on restricted privileges, usually called the naughty pajamas. I still ordered and checked out a lot of 40k books from the library. They were always popular, but was instructed to never print anything related to 40k or any other game ever again. So that's my story. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers. Yeah, guys. Yeah. Are you still feeling really salty towards low-level criminals in prison? Dude, this sucks, man. Let them play with coins. You can play the game with coins. Let them play with coins. Man, what are they going to do with some paper? Take the dice away, let them play with coins. Right? That's it. That's all you need to do. Take the dice away, let them play with coins. You can still gamble with coins, but it's much harder, right? Like 1 cent coins, like nothing, you know, no value whatsoever. Or get tokens with 2 sides to them. That's what you do. You get tokens with 2 sides to them. Print loads of them out. Metal ones. They're cheap to do. Make them with like copper or something, or some other cheap metal. Yeah? Do that. There's ways around this without like destroying somebody's... That's all they have, man. And it was probably getting them through the sentence. All they have and it was taken away. Like, there are some parts of... Then again, do you know, why am I judging? Prison guards, people who worked in prison facilities. What do you think of this? For me, it's way too harsh. Like, these are things made of paper. Space Marines made of soap. Fucking get over it, right? You know, these are low-level prisoners who want to get out and are just passing the time, you know, learning a game that they can play together. A bit of camaraderie, right? Fuck that, dude. Come on. Come on. This sounds like people just not getting it. It sounds like parents, like really strict Christian parents who don't get it, throwing out all of your D&D stuff. Do you know what I mean? But a really adult, tragic version. If you're still working there, dude, pass on my condolences. You know, say there's a YouTuber out there who salutes them for their effort to get into the hobby. And I hope that even though they were dickheads in the past, that they're not dickheads anymore, and that they get out and they're good boys. Alright? Anyway, I love you a long time. I'll speak to you very, very, very soon. I'll speak to you on Sunday for our Cyberpunk session. So I'll see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.